Call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers on May 23rd, 2019. All managers are present except Manager Loftus, Manager Hajmati, and Designate Maxwell, Manager Designate Maxwell. Is there any member of the public who wanted to address the board? Then I'm looking at the agenda. We're going to strike 11.1. Are there any other changes? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Manager Miller, second by Manager Olson. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda consists of the minutes of the May 9th meeting, approval of the check registers, the general checking account, and the surety account, and item 7.1, which is resolution 19-058, authorization to contract with the City of Edina and Hamlin University Center for Global and Environmental Education. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Rognus, second by Manager Miller.
Correct.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have a couple of date-related things to mention in my report. The first is that, as was mentioned in committee, I'm looking at June 20th in the evening. It's a Thursday for a board retreat. Does that work for folks?
Yes.
All right, then we will get that scheduled. Time to be determined, depending on the final agenda and how much time we need, I think. And then on June 27th, we have a board meeting scheduled, and I wanted to see whether there's going to be a quorum, because that is the same time as Summer Tour, Mod Summer Tour. And I know that Bill Olson and I are planning to go. Is anybody else thinking of going?
I've been thinking about going, but I have a conflict, and so I haven't quite made up my mind.
And Manager Hajmati is interested too. So we could reschedule that meeting. It could be June 25th, which is Tuesday that week. Does that work for staff?
That always works for staff.
Oh, okay. Silly question. All right, then we will, do I need a motion?
If we
Mr.
went
Smith?
one day earlier, we can meet on my birthday.
Bring the leftover cake and we'll be happy. Okay, is there a motion then to reset the June 27th meeting to June 25th?
So moved.
Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Hajmati. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. No arm wrestling involved, that was good. So we'll schedule that special meeting, and then we'll change the 27th to the 25th. Of course, the session of the legislature ended, and there's a lot still up in the air. I was thinking about giving a little report, but really what we can say is we don't know yet. And so that will be coming out. Manager Miller has stepped away, so let me say that in Policy and Planning Committee this evening, we had a presentation on the 2020 budget priorities, an opportunity to discuss and look at the upcoming schedule, just to get a general idea of what is coming forward. And we got a 6 Mile Creek Halsted Bay program update from Ms. Brown and Mr. Dietrich. So that was the committee agenda. Then upcoming meetings are shown in the agenda, save that we'll change the 27th and add the 20th. And we will move to item 11.2, Resolution 19060, which is authorization to award a contract for the website redesign consultant, Ms. Mamayak and Ms. Bamani, and Ms. Van Kirk.
President
Oh, I
Barnes
skipped.
skipped over staff.
Oh, thank you so much for calling that to my attention. Mr. Dietrich and Ms. Barlow.
President White, managers, thank you for having me here this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Grace Barlow, the newest addition to our permitting team. Grace has actually just moved here from the Milwaukee area, but rather than spoil all the details, I'll introduce yourself.
President White, managers, thank you for letting me introduce myself. Like Tom said, my name is Grace Barlow. I just moved up here from Milwaukee, but I'm really excited to be in Minnesota. I was there, I'm from there originally, and I was there for the past 3 years, working and earning my master's degree in freshwater science. I promise not to gloat too much if the Bucks make it to the finals tonight. We'll see. But like I said, I'm very excited to be up here. I'm really excited for this opportunity to work here at Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, mostly because I'm really excited to learn more about the watershed model of management, and specifically Minnehaha Creek, because I think that your philosophy of balanced urban ecology is going to be increasingly important in the next generation. Permitting is a really important cog in the wheel, so I'm excited to just use my skills in a different way and be here. So thank you.
Welcome.
We don't consider you a cog.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Magda.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Welcome.
Now we'll move to 19060. Looks like it was testing the waters.
Turn on our mics as well. President White, managers, so we are here tonight to request authorization to execute a contract with Vendy Advertising for our website redesign project. So myself, Kelly Mamayak, and Sarah Bamani are co-project managers here tonight giving the presentation. And our guest, Kathy Van Kirk, is founding principal of Vendy Advertising. And so she will introduce herself to you later on in the presentation and give a brief overview of her company. So first of all, just want to explain that the strategic communications consultant contract was scheduled to come to you tonight. However, we have delayed that and rescheduled that for the next meeting on June 13th to give us a little more time to further detail out the internal staff portion of the process. So we will have a complete presentation ready for you on June 13th on that process. It is relevant, though, and will be referred to in tonight's presentation because these processes are going to converge at different points along the way. So for this evening, we'll give a brief review of the website redesign purpose, background, and goals. Also go over how it's going to be coordinated with the strategic communications and engagement consultant and the IT consultant. Then we will detail the details of the website redesign consultant contract itself. And then we'll introduce Kathy to give an overview of her company. And then, of course, have the request for authorization and answer any questions that you might have. So for the review of the purpose of the website redesign, of course, the last redesign was in 2011, so that was quite a long time ago. 8 years is a lifetime when considering technology and how far it's advanced over the last 8 years. So it's time. In 2017, we had a major change in our model here at the watershed with our 2017 Watershed Management Plan. New strategic priorities were identified. And the website is a crucial tool to communicate that to the public and really has not been able to keep up with these new strategic priorities. Also, there have been advancements in website design. Mobility is a given now, being able to access the websites on mobile devices and phones and tablets. Ours does not do that. The desktop version appears on your phone, and it's very difficult to see depending on the size of your screen. There are also new accessibility requirements and standards for public agencies like ours, as well as new design and functionality that's available now that is not available to us with our current platform. And finally, the purpose of the website redesign process is to also coordinate with our IT plan and our strategic communications and engagement plan. They are each going to inform the other and will occur concurrently throughout this year. So a little bit of background on the process to where we got to this point. In 2018, we reviewed the current website analytics, which helped us identify who are our current audiences on our website, what is the most used content on the website, the most popular pages. Then we worked with staff to identify the target audiences for the future website, must-have and nice-to-have features, what we need to have absolutely, and what are maybe some things on the wish list. And then identified our draft goals for our website redesign, and they were based on our strategic communications draft goals, which were also identified through a staff process. And then we collected example RFPs from other government organizations as well as watershed districts, just to make sure that we were following a standard protocol and that we were checking all the boxes. And then we had exploratory conversations with them as well as some vendors to see what do they look for in an RFP, and so that we can develop the most effective RFP possible. So then in 2019, we presented our findings and our proposed RFP to the board liaisons at the time, managers Olson and Shackleton, and the Operations and Programs Committee, as well as the Citizens Advisory Committee, having review at all those levels. And then the board approved the release of the RFP on March 14th. We got a large response of 35 vendors applied to this, our RFP responded. And through a process, we interviewed 5 finalists. We winnowed them down based on criteria that were outlined in the RFP, identified 5 and interviewed them in April, and then recommended Vindy advertising to Manager Olson on April 25th. And so here we are today with the recommendation before you. So again, we put together these draft goals in a staff-driven process based on the strategic communications goals. So for the website redesign, we're looking for a visually appealing design to tell concise and compelling stories. We want to attract attention. We want to be, definitely a compelling organization that people are going to want to read about. We want the navigation to be intuitive, so the information is easy for people to find, so they don't have to go through multiple clicks and hunting all over the website. We want to put the most important and most used information front and center and make it easy for folks to find. We also want the website to be accessible to people with all abilities, as well as transparent, publicly accessible data, so that people can obtain the data that they need from us without having to, contact us directly. So making it as accessible and transparent as possible. Interactive customer service features. These things would be like interactive forms on the website for permit applications, so people could apply for permits and be granted a permit online, potentially, and then also maps, interactive maps, so people can even potentially make their own maps. So the sky's the limit there. And then improved back-end administration. This is the user interface for staff, making it easy to navigate on the back end, to add new information, to change the content, to make sure that it's always compelling and up to date. And then finally, another goal is to facilitate community engagement. There are opportunities to include features where we would actually engage with the public through either polling or forums. There are many different ways now that organizations use websites to interact and engage with their community members. And then just briefly touching on the audiences for the website, we've identified 2 tiers. The first tier would be our policymaker, developer, and agency staff audience group. And this speaks to our balanced and root ecology approach and our work at building capital projects and enacting policy change to integrate land use and water planning. And those are our tier 1 audiences to achieve those goals. And then tier 2 are those folks who have to come to our website for different things or want to come to our website. Either they're applying for permits or they're looking for paddling information because they want to take their paddling gear out on the creek, which isn't recommended right now. But they would find that out, right, on our website. And also homeowners interested in best management practices, like, how do they apply salt in a, sensible way, turf management practices and that sort of thing.
So the website redesign consultant will be coordinating their work with the strategic communications and engagement consultant as well as the IT consultant. So the website redesign consultant and the strategic communications and engagement consultant will coordinate their work through the discovery, research, and insight phases. Work will be split with the strategic communications and engagement consultant focusing on those tier 1 audience members, so the policymakers, developers, agency staff. And then the website redesign consultant will be focusing on the tier 2 audiences, so those homeowners applying for permits, individuals looking for paddling information, etc. And then the information gathered on both tier 1 and tier 2 audiences will be compiled into an insights report, which will be shared with the website redesign consultant to help inform the new website's content strategy. And then after the insight phase, the work of the strategic communications and engagement consultant and website redesign consultant will diverge. So the website redesign consultant will then work with staff in the fall to really develop the content strategy, sitemap, and structure for a new website, which will be informed by the findings of the strategic communications and engagement consultant. And then the draft website content strategy will also be reviewed by the strategic communications and engagement consultant to ensure consistency with the strategic communications and engagement plan. And then in addition to developing the content strategy, the website redesign consultant will also be creating a website needs assessment, features list, and technical requirements. And some of that information will be discovered through coordination with the IT consultant, particularly around third-party integration. So as the IT consultant is identifying systems for organizational IT needs, some of those will need to integrate with the website, so trying to figure that out. And that coordination will be ongoing throughout the year. So this graphic is just a visual representation of what I just talked about, just to kind of give you an idea of the concurrent processes that are going on and who's doing what and where work overlaps. So these are separate but dependent processes. So moving into the scope of work, the website redesign process is being split into 2 phases. Phase 1 is planning for the website build, and that's going to continue through 2019. And then phase 2 is the actual website build, and that is anticipated to happen in 2020. The contract for phase 1 is a not to exceed amount of $25,000. And the phase 1 scope includes several different phases. So the first phase is the discovery phase. And in that phase, the website redesign consultant is going to look at our current website analytics and review peer organization websites to kind of get a sense of what other people are doing and what we like and what we don't like. And the discovery phase will also include that ongoing coordination piece with the IT consultant on those third-party integrations. And like I mentioned, that'll continue throughout 2019. The second phase is the research phase. And the website redesign consultant will conduct research of the tier 2 audience members. So again, those are the homeowners applying for permits, people looking for paddling information. And the research methods that may be used include listening sessions, usability testing, and online surveys. And there might also be other methods that we want to try out, but we'll discuss those in coordination with the strategic communications and engagement consultant as well. The research phase will also include the website redesign consultant providing an estimated cost for the actual website build by July 15th to inform our 2020 budget process. And then from the research, the website redesign consultant will provide a general insights report on those tier 2 audiences specific to the website. And that information will be included in an insights report that's developed as part of the strategic communications and engagement plan. And that report will include audience personas and high-level takeaways on audience perceptions of the district and the best way to communicate with those audiences. And then in the fall, as I mentioned, the website redesign consultant will lead staff in a process to identify core content that supports business goals and key user tasks for the new website, as well as map out the user experience. And that information will really be the foundation of the content strategy, sitemap, and site structure, which will be developed in coordination with staff. And then, as I mentioned, the strategic communications and engagement consultant will review that draft content strategy to ensure consistency with the strategic communications and engagement plan. And then lastly, is phase 2 approval. So in December, staff will work with the website redesign consultant to draft a scope of work for the actual website build, if the board would like to continue working with the same consultant in phase 2. And also during December, staff anticipates providing the board, the OPC, and the CAC with an update on the work done as part of phase 1 before bringing a phase 2 scope of work for approval. So now we're going to hand it over to Kathy Van Kirk from Vendy Advertising so she can tell you a little bit more about Vendy.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me tonight. I'm happy to give you a brief overview on Vendy. We have, if you want to just top line, we are a digital brand agency, full service advertising, marketing, and web firm. We are celebrating our 15th year, located in La Crosse, Wisconsin. 15 years ago, we founded Vendy, wanting to work a little bit more regionally. We worked at a national agency for very big brands, and we're hoping to get on fewer planes and enjoy La Crosse and all the recreational opportunities. So we thought the way to do that was to start an agency, which is what we did. It's been grown every year, and our model is experienced professionals in-house. We do not work with a lot of subcontractors. We prefer having the collaboration of a team that knows each other well and that has terrific expertise and works together in the same space, with some exception. So in general, we have national agency talent, but the 20 of us are right sized for staying really closely connected with our clients. We serve primarily government, technology, education, and healthcare. We do have a conservancy group that we work very closely with, Mississippi Valley Conservancy. We also have manufacturing and consumer clients, B2B and B2C, which is appropriate in this for this project, and primarily upper Midwest regional area that we serve. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. I happen to be from Minnesota, representing Wisconsin tonight and the Bucks. This is a partial client roster. You can see the healthcare, higher ed, government is represented. We have a contract with the state of Wisconsin, and we are one of 3 agencies out of 80 that are preferred vendors in 8 categories, and the categories are those that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So we're kind of the little agency that could, and enjoy long-lasting relationships with some pretty tremendous clients. So we're happy to have the opportunity to talk to you folks. We hear often from our clients that we are good listeners, which we think is particularly important with the collaboration that we will hopefully be experiencing here with IT and the strategic consultant. The areas that we offer in-house, again, strategy, research, marketing, media and digital, and on the creative and development side, design, course development, copy and content, and we have in-house photography and video too. What we find, we think the biggest, I guess, assets that we offer our clients and what our clients tell us they enjoy most working with us, again, is the problem solving that we bring, because we, do carefully listen and respect our clients. That's kind of a dig on some agencies that they have all the answers. We don't believe that. We think our clients have terrific expertise and look forward to learning with every project that we get your organization, and we can bring our marketing and technical expertise. We have a really remarkable web group for an agency. Our director of development is a cited core contributor on the last 2 versions of WordPress, which most websites on the globe are built. That is the largest structural foundation used today. We also have a really terrific Drupal community web developer. Because of our size and our process, we're very nimble and responsive. The national agency experience that we have is 4A agency experience, so our process is built on those tenets, and we believe that that's really made us a strong, efficient organization. We have a service standard of same-day response. We respond to our clients within the same day with, if not an answer, a plan of action. Transparency and affordability are very important to us. Every invoice, every status report is a progress report for the completion of the project or the amount of budget that we've used and that we have left. And it's also identified what portion of the budget are agency fees and what portion of the budgets are pre-approved outside costs. For example, media costs or licensing or that kind of thing. And we think that those are some of the reasons that we have such long-term client relationships. And also, we have very little turnover, which is fairly remarkable for a creative services firm.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. So with that, we will wrap up with our request for board authorization to execute a contract with Vendy Advertising for phase 1 work of the website redesign.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 19060?
So moved.
Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Rodman, are there questions or thoughts here? Manager Olson?
Go ahead.
I'm not voting for this. I didn't get a copy of the proposal, and I just went online on the Wisconsin Workforce website, and it was adequate for an agency. I don't think it's exciting, and I don't think it's what we're looking for in terms of punch and effectiveness. I'm sure that it was, it's adequate for a state agency, but it isn't what I was looking for.
Manager Olson?
Okay.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding your comment, but for the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, we did a series of documentary training videos. We did not do their website.
Oh,
Which
I
just-
was under the impression that you did the website.
No, and it just actually won a 2019 Gold Telly Award, the series of
Okay,
videos. So.
what website can I look at that you did?
I have a variety of website samples that we can share.
There was
Can
an
we pull that
email
up on
from
here?
Ms. Bomani with the
I just hid
proposal
them. Why
inside
don't you
it.
just do it?
I don't know, 15 website maybe.
Well, I'm not going to do a examination
Madam
here.
President,
Mr. Smith?
if I could just also point out, we are in this, referring to Manager Miller's question about seeing the actual proposal, typically you're carefully balancing that proposal not being public information until the contract is signed. And so we can go through a process as the board needs it to get access, but we're balancing the public nature of the open meeting law and the privacy issues. So I think that's one other reason why the actual proposal wasn't in the packet.
It was emailed, yeah. Manager Olson?
Okay, one of the comments I wanted to make is that as we reviewed the bidders who offered solutions, we had a lot of data-driven capacity and capability, and frankly, we asked for that. That's what we were looking for. We wanted to bring everything that we have together in terms of data and make it available to the user. What separated this company from the rest is the compelling experience, and I think we were learning that word that day that they gave that presentation, and we saw their slides, and we saw the story, and we were dealing for the first time after 4 interviews with a company that does advertising. And it was compelling, and it was interesting. And then the more we thought about it, and the more we thought, if we build this site and it is that good looking and that interesting to deal with, we have actually a 2 + 2 = 5 experience here where we can leverage that same company for our strategic communication and engagement plan. So even though it's not part of the website contract, it is a relationship that we can build that will really help our communication strategy and engagement. So this was a timing and capability story that really lended itself to differentiate that from everybody else. So.
Thank you for sitting in those interviews and serving as liaison to that process.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
Thank you all, and thank you. Moving to item 11.3, Resolution 19061.
Can I ask a
Joe
follow-up
Lane.
question?
Yes.
Is this going to be delivered to us, or is the board going to have any review of the development along the way, or what's going to happen?
Could we ask you to return Ms. Mamaya?
Because I don't think there's a more important tool for us than this website for communication, education, and all the other things. And I think we can run the risk that it just be adequate rather than exciting and profound.
Thank you. Is there a updating the board or input from the board process?
Yes, President White, Manager Miller, managers, yes, definitely. We have an iterative process planned in which we will have frequent check-ins using our board liaison, as well as our committees, and our CAC is going to be involved as well in helping draft the content strategy and the navigation. You'll be seeing, drafts of that. So it will be very iterative because it is an organizational tool. And as you say, it is the most important communications tool that we have. So it's important that we all have buy-in and all are in agreement with how that strategy moves forward. And another benefit to how we have phased this is phase 1. So this will be informing our 2020 budget for the build. This will be doing research and preliminary content strategy and site navigation. And so we can assess at the end of phase 1 whether to continue with the consultant we have or to reopen the process.
Thank you. Manager Loftus.
I echo your comments about thanking Manager Olson for his time as a liaison. But did we lose Brian as a liaison as well, or is he still helping us? Maybe that would
we had acted
be a spot for
he could not
your
be a
input?
liaison because he isn't on the board, but we appointed him as an advisor.
Okay.
And so as the process goes forward, he will be advised and invited to all the meetings that Manager Olson will be
Would
invited
you be
to.
interested though?
Pardon?
Being more involved in it?
Am I?
Yeah. No.
No, I haven't
Okay.
had any talent.
Well, yes, you do. I mean,
I just know what good sites look like and what bad sites look like, and
well, that's a
I've
talent.
seen it enough.
It is.
And I spent all day long, and now that I got more time on the internet, and there's just a lot of crap out there that people think is clever and it is not.
Yeah,
And
but
it's-
differentiating that is
Yeah,
useful.
I know a good one when I see one.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving to
Did it
Ms.
create enough
Joan
tension
Lane.
here?
I don't know, I'm pretty tension-free.
We're going to keep that standard high.
Yeah, there you go.
No crap.
No crap. Yeah, there we go. New
Like that
flag.
bar.
So you are on that panel?
We'll keep working on him. Go ahead.
President White, fellow managers. Tonight, I'm bringing forward Resolution 19061, which is authorization to execute a contract with WENC for Lake Town 9 equipment installation, monitoring, and reporting. And although this resolution is for a contract approval, is providing us an opportunity to highlight a project which came through the permitting front door and then exemplified the district's strategic shift to partner with the land use community. It also highlights the workflow model for department interactions throughout the evolution of a project. Lake Time 9th Wetland Project originated in 2015 as a permit application from Lennar. Their proposed development included the improvement of an old farm road, and that would have impacted 0.87 acres of wetland and trigger replacement requirements under the Wetland Conservation Act. Permitting staff recognized that there was the potential to provide a larger natural resource benefit, and so then they engaged planning staff. Planning staff then coordinated with the City of Victoria and Lennar staff and identified an opportunity to restore 12 acres of wetland, establish 5 acres of upland buffer, and that partnership then resulted in 6 to 8 acres of restored wetland beyond Lennar's regulatory requirements. The restoration work included the construction of an outlet structure along 6 Mile Creek, invasive species management, seeding in the wetland, and upper buffer establishment. The work began in 2017 and was concluded in 2018. Once a project's been completed, the long-term maintenance responsibilities then come to the project maintenance and land management program. That agreement between Lennar and the district specifies that MCWD is responsible for the monitoring and reporting requirements throughout the 5-year establishment period. So the project maintenance staff, myself, and research and monitoring staff plan to work together to fulfill the hydrology and vegetation monitoring requirements that are outlined in the restoration plan. But in order to accomplish this, MCW staff will need to join WANC staff during all the site visits in 2019 to be trained on the specific monitoring process. Staff intends to utilize that knowledge then to perform the majority of the monitoring requirements in subsequent years. The Lake Town 9th Wetland Project is now transitioned into the maintenance phase, and therefore staff is requesting WANC services to fulfill the requirements for 2019. In conclusion, staff is requesting the board of managers authorizes the district administrator to execute a contract with WANC for 2019 Lake Town 9th Wetland Equipment Installation, Monitoring and Reporting for $9,700, and authorizes the district administrator to authorize change orders and not to exceed amount of $10,670.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 19061?
Move approval.
Manager Miller moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Olson? Are there questions for Ms. Jonley? Manager Olson?
So how many people are going to be trained?
Manager Olson, it'll likely be 1 to 2. One MCW staff person, more than likely me for the vegetation,
Okay.
and then likely Jill Sweet out of our research and monitoring staff for some of the hydrology stuff.
Okay, are we going to use the same skill set at the other locations, or we're?
That is the plan. So we're kind of training up here, so when we move forward into other projects that have these same components, we'll have that expertise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 11.4, Resolution 19062, Ms. Schaffler.
President White, managers, tonight I'm before you to seek authorization for the board to accept and authorize the execution of a conservation easement located at 555 Bushaway Road in Wayzata. And I want to note that a representative from the property owner, David Bear, is here, and I've worked closely with David over the past year to really keep things moving and draft all the documents that are before you tonight. So at the end, David would like to say a few words as well. So this, if the board recalls, we've definitely discussed this property quite a bit at the Planning and Policy Committee, and through that we discussed that the district, operates a land conservation program where we work to try to conserve natural resources across the district. And as part of that program, we can choose to purchase fee title or choose to execute conservation easements to help us achieve those conservation goals. And that program also encourages the voluntary conservation of lands and also donation of lands if it does help and accomplish the district's goals as well. So about a year ago, the district was approached by a prospective buyer of 555 Bushway Road, which is located here in yellow, and they were interested in the district would be willing to serve as an easement holder if the purchase of the property actually went through. So we reviewed this potential opportunity with the Policy and Planning Committee about 4 times last year, and through that conversation we reviewed what the potential easements benefits could be to the district. We reviewed what the landscape plan might look like, and then the most recent time was in September of last year. The committee reviewed the draft easement, which is pretty similar to the one that's in the packet before you. And at that time, the committee had said, we feel good about where things are at, and directed staff to continue work with the landowner to refine the easement and then bring back forward to the board, which is where we are tonight. So I'm just going to briefly walk through the easement document itself, and then also walk through the associated natural resource management plan. So the total property is about 6.228 acres in size. So the easement area is encumbering 2.436 of those acres. And the areas highlighted in the yellow dashed are the easement itself. So it's separated into 3 separate easements to allow two different driveways to come through off of Bushway Road. And here's just some pictures of the property itself. So there's a nice remnant maple basswood forest on it. There's 140 feet of shoreline that'll be encumbered by the district that hasn't been touched and is still naturalized. And there's some really good, cool old growth cottonwoods and some wetlands that are kind of prime for restoration. Beyond that, the easement benefits itself, the document that's in the packet before you tonight generally follows the conservation values that the district standards has set out and the district's template for conservation easements. And the easement allows the district to come in and allows the property owner to come in and do restoration and enhancement in conjunction with district staff moving forward. Additionally, the landowner was really interested in trying to manage stormwater and in doing flood management on the site as much as they could to help the benefit of the lake, so that allows for that. And then because the site is a little bit complicated with topography, we then allowed any sort of infrastructure that would be associated with doing those kind of water management facilities. And then the last thing was just for the property owners to be able to enjoy the property, the full property, was allowing natural surface trails that didn't interfere with any of the natural resource goals that we identified. So the natural resource management plan was a document that we requested be part of the easement itself, which would help dictate and outline what the natural resource restoration would look like once that was to take place. And this followed the district standard template that we've established and was drafted in consultation with district staff, but was done at the expense of the property owner. So what it does is it describes the current site conditions that were then reviewed with district staff, outlines the restoration goals for the site, and then, as you see here, divides the site into different management units. So each management unit has its own unique characteristics, and then the plan itself outlines what are the goals for that different management unit, and what steps do you do to work towards achieving those goals. So the benefits to the district is we're able to conserve and restore a natural area along Lake Minnetonka because of the property owner's interest in trying to protect and utilize the land for stormwater management, directly improving the water quality at the site. And then because there are some remnant maple basswood, you're conserving that important wildlife habitat in that area of Lake Minnetonka. And then also you're supplementing existing easements. I meant to say in close proximity. As you note, there's Bushway Road just to the south, and then the Grays Bay Dam easement just southeast. And then as the district considered, contemplated what obligations it would mean for the organization moving forward, because the landowner is willing to pay for all the costs to do the restoration and do those sorts of things, really it's just time coordinating from the staff's perspective. So it's annual coordination with the landowner, annual field inspections, follow-up reporting of those inspections. So assuming everything's in compliance, we've estimated around 5 hours a year for staff time to move forward. So with that, I was just going to seek authorization now if we want to wait for the end to allow David to speak, or is that something we do before?
Did you want to add substance, or we could take you now, or we can talk to you later?
Whatever the board, I don't have
Okay.
a whole lot to say, so
We'll proceed
Okay.
then.
So with that, tonight the board is being requested to accept the easement and execute the easement at 555 Bushway Road, and then also authorizes the district administrator to process and sign the IRS form, and then follow any sort of district adopted policy around that regard for the tax benefits. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 19062?
Move approval.
Andrew Miller, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Grognas, questions? Andrew Miller?
On the county property report shows 555 Bushway Road is 2.63 acres. Is there additional lot involved?
Yeah, Manager Miller, there's 3 separate lots that
Okay.
are encumbered by.
Thank you.
Manager Olson?
Can you go back to the segmented layout? Yes. The 2 openings are both going to be driveway access?
Manager Olson, yeah, it's currently being considered for two or three lots, and so they wanted to preserve the right and not have that interfere with any of the natural resource goals of the site. So we decided to keep those allotments for the potential driveway. And there is a current driveway already in that north separation. There is not one to the south.
Okay. And I was just surprised to see how much wider the space was going deep into the tennis court area. My original expectation was that it was a narrower buffer of land or an easement of land. That's relatively wide. So I'm not complaining, I'm just surprised that that's how much space they wanted to protect.
Yeah, I think Manager Wilson, when they were starting to look at the layout of the land and where it makes sense to, work with existing topography and what would, also looking at the permitting lens when you're redeveloping, where do those things naturally make sense? So it was starting to lay out where you do those rain gardens and stormwater management is what you start to see the footprints of on this map.
And the last question is it still intended to be one lot, only one estate, or is it possibly multiple estates?
Mr. Bear?
I'm sorry, Imagine were you asking me?
Yes.
Did you come to the front?
Yeah.
Sure.
And for our record, if you'd say your name and address.
Absolutely. My name is David Bear. My address is 6423 City West Parkway, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344. President White, managers, thank you for your time. To answer your question, Manager Olson, there's still a debate internally of whether it will be one estate property or 2, but that's the debate, and there has been no further decision.
But it won't be 3?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would make the comment that 140 feet, that's the lake shore included, doesn't look like a lot on that drawing, but that could be as many as, 3-4 lots in some parts of the lake. So that is a considerable lakefront. It's a wonderful gift to have. Are any other questions or comments? Mr. Bear?
If I could, I just wanted to first of all thank Tiffany from the bottom of our heart. She has been unbelievable to work with for at least a year, amongst probably a schedule that is busier than anybody's. So I just want to recognize from our perspective, she has been absolutely fantastic. The managers, the board, I know that there's been a lot of discussion over this over the past year. So also want to thank you for all of your time. We're really excited to do this. We think that, or we hope that it might trigger others as properties turn over, or maybe even as they don't, to sort of think about these sorts of options and think about ways that we can kind of help our water, our lake, our environment. And and do the right thing. So we're really appreciative of your willingness to participate with us. Thank you.
Did you tell them about the billboard we were going to put on the property?
Wait for it to be approved.
Clean, drain, dry.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much. Do I have a motion on the floor? We have a
Yes,
vote?
you do.
Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We too appreciate the work Ms. Shelford does.
Thank you. Yes.
Item 11.5 is Resolution 19063. Ms. Brown.
Okay, thank you, President White and managers. I'm here seeking authorization or approval of the cooperative agreement for the Wasserman West Lakefront Park project. A little bit of a presentation outline. I'm going to review the project and some of its history, provide an overview of the major terms of this, which is the second cooperative agreement that we've had with the City of Victoria for this project, and then I'll review kind of the timeline and next steps. So as the board is aware, the Wasserman West project is really an opportunity for kind of the first flagship integrated land use natural resource improvement in the 6 Mile Creek Halstead Bay subwatershed. The project is located just west of Lake Wasserman, kind of at the edge of development in the City of Victoria, sitting just adjacent to a major growth corridor. The pond on this site, which you can see here, has kind of long been identified as a likely source of nutrient pollution into Lake Wasserman, which is an impaired water body. And there had been kind of concerns long-standing about the impact of the feedlot adjacent to, or just on the other side of Highway 43. While it's now under a nutrient management plan and they work closely with the county, it's been there for a long time and it's a likely source for some of that phosphorus pollution. So we were kind of early on, through some investigation on the pond site, able to look at kind of the nutrient budget within the pond and identified that the source of phosphorus is from internal loading, not from kind of ongoing watershed loading from the farm site. So it is a kind of short-term implementable solution to address nutrient pollution. Kind of as we were performing that investigation around kind of the site conditions, the property adjacent to the pond and wetland was put up for sale on the private market. The property as a whole includes 1,500 feet of undisturbed shoreline, the 22-acre wetland, which encompasses that pond site, as well as a stream corridor and ravine to the south of the property. So we approached the city to see if they were interested in sort of coordinating on a shared implementation project on site. And the city did find that it's consistent with some of their plans for a park and trail system in the city. So they had identified in their comprehensive plan the desire for a waterfront park, which this would achieve. And then again, it also sits kind of at the intersection of that growth corridor and creates some opportunity for long-term trail connection, as well as kind of serving as a regional draw in this major growth area. Wasserman has also had been identified as a partnership opportunity for both agencies, so it was a unique opportunity to kind of work together to achieve a shared vision on site. So the district entered a purchase agreement for the property in February of 2017, and that purchase agreement was contingent upon the execution of a cooperative agreement with the City of Victoria, spelling out project responsibilities. So in May of 2017, the first cooperative agreement was approved with the city. What that cooperative agreement achieved is spelled out a land financing structure, so wherein the district would acquire the land and then the city would pay us back for the land over a period of 5 years, becoming the eventual fee title holder, while the district would retain easement over the natural resource areas. It spelled out a process wherein we would work together to develop a park concept design to make sure that we were sort of on the same page about eventual site use. It spelled out the way that construction costs would be shared amongst the two parties, namely that the district would be responsible for the natural resource investment and the city would be responsible for the park amenity improvements. And then finally, it spelled out that as we were going through that design process, we would also develop an implementation plan, which would include project financing as well as timeline with possible phasing in of improvements. So here's sort of a timeline coming out of that cooperative agreement in May of 2017, approved by both board and council. We returned to both entities in November with a park design scope. And then between sort of January and June of 2018, worked primarily with the city's Park and Recreation Committee, as well as through some public input sessions to develop the park concept plan. In July of 2018, the Park and Recreation Committee, as we were kind of reaching concurrence around design, recommended to the City Council that they sort of propose financing solutions to work towards full implementation of the project. Then in 2019 was when we were targeting construction. Then from coming out of that and really through September, we worked through a series of meetings, primarily with City Council, as well as kind of pulling in Park and Recreation Committee and their Finance Committee, evaluating all of the possible financing scenarios for the park. So through that, we were sort of gauging willingness of the city to finance the full improvements. We were evaluating the different options and the relative costs of those options, primarily looking at whether we would use the district's financing arrangement with Carver County or whether the city would use its own bonding authority. And then also looking at kind of the options for city repayment. We went back to council in November to sort of get their go-ahead to move forward with a second cooperative agreement. But at that time, they were anticipating council turnover with the new election, and that current council elected to postpone the action until new council members were brought aboard. In the meantime, the city had some staff turnover, so we've been working with new council members, with their new city manager, and working towards the eventual approval of the cooperative agreement by City Council earlier last week on May 13th. So now I'm going to run through sort of the major highlights of the second cooperative agreement. There's kind of a lot, so bear with me. The first thing that it addresses is the design. So it's under this cooperative agreement, design will be a shared cost between the city and the district, with the district leading in the selection of the design consultant and sort of principally managing that design contract. The only design cost that will not be shared between the two entities is the cost of designing the park shelter, which will be at the sole city expense. And then the target budget for that work is going to be $250,000, again a shared cost. And that will be solicited through an RFP that will be brought forward later in the summer. Another piece is the construction costs and oversight. So the allocation of construction costs is going to be consistent with the first cooperative agreement. So city's still paying for the amenity improvements and district paying for natural resource improvements. Right now we're working with an estimated total cost for park amenities of $2.1 million. And the district's contribution to natural resource improvements is about $400,000. And that includes the alum treatment, which is underway with grant dollars from Bowser. And then the other piece of the construction is the construction oversight, which will be led by the district, but any cost for contracting for that construction oversight will be a shared cost. For financing of the property itself, the cooperative agreement modifies the purchase agreement so that rather than having that financing of the land over a 5-year payout, the land will be rolled into whichever finance vehicle is used. So the district would receive full payment when that financing is secured. And it also modifies the timing of the property conveyance. So the conveyance will occur when the 90% design plans are approved and when the construction contract has been awarded. So that's when we would close on the land with the city. The project financing itself, it's structured to provide financing using the Carver County Master Finance Agreement. However, the city can elect to use their own bonding authority. They will need to decide by the time that we approve 90% design plans. Most likely, they'll be doing this through their regular budgeting process, so we should know by September if they're going to use their own authority or use the Carver County program. And then finally, there are some, I'm calling them closing contingencies. Essentially, there are several points in the design process where the city could elect not to proceed. At this point, it's not meant to be, the city's commitment isn't meant to be ambiguous, but there just are kind of decision points through the design process where if they withheld an approval, it would kind of stall the project. So the way that the points of potential stalling, if you will, would be the city could decline to approve the 90% design plans. The city could reject the construction contract award if it exceeds a 10% threshold on the engineer's estimate. And then they could also reject the terms of the financing if we were if we were advancing with the Carver County Master Finance Agreement. The way that we have planned for those contingencies is that if they withhold an approval, they will owe the district for the full design costs, so they would have to pay us back for our design expenditures. And then the city would be able to, the district would be able to elect whether we'd like to retain the property or have the city close under the terms of the previous cooperative agreement. So we essentially would have the choice as to who would be the fee title owner in that case. So that's the second cooperative agreement. So again, the recommendation this evening is to approve that cooperative agreement. With approval, we would move towards project ordering, which would occur in late June and early July. Concurrent with that ordering process, we'd be drafting a request for proposals for design, which would come to the board hopefully in late June for release. And then we'd work through that process, probably bringing back contract award no later than August 22nd. And then the target for 90% design plans would be December of this year for construction in 2020.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 19063?
So moved.
Manager Olson, I'm so surprised. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Loftus?
Well, we're going to let them sit for a while.
Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we keep a title to any of the property or just easements or what?
Manager Miller, we would just be retaining easement over the wetland shoreline and then the ravine area to the south.
Okay.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whisker.
Just want to thank Anna, President White, and Manager Olson for persistence and assembling the partnership. I think there are probably no less than 50 points of engagement along the way with city staff and city council to get to this point, and for Anna for clearly unpacking and presenting all the different parts of the cooperative agreement. I was amazed at, I was able to follow along this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Manager Hajmati.
Yes, I want to congratulate all those who've been working on this. Excellent job. Absolutely excellent. The detail and the diligence really came through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We will now move to the spring water level update from the Shelburne. Every spring.
Timely.
Spring water. Is this what they were?
Spring water,
Spring
yes.
water.
Yes.
Fiji water.
All right, just loading here. All right. President White, managers, I wanted to take the opportunity just to provide a water level update with the rain over last weekend and yesterday. It's timely to have an update just to give you a kind of situation and status report on where we're at. So just for broader context, as the board may recall, back in March, the National Weather Service had put out the spring flood outlook. And as you can see, Minnesota was pretty targeted for potential for moderate to major flooding, as were nearly 2/3 of the U.S. And they had predicted that this would extend into May. So we're still kind of seeing that occur. And in Minnesota alone this spring, there's been over $32 million of damage to public infrastructure and property. So, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District isn't alone in kind of the high water battle. And just looking ahead, shows above average precipitation. So there's like kind of no short-term end in sight to providing relief to the current situation we're in. So 2019 thus far. So with the rain yesterday, it pushed us to 13.7 inches for the year. And just already this year, we're 5 inches above normal for context. So that's pretty significant. That's more than kind of the May and June already going above normal. And if you recall from recent communications, 2013 to 2018 was the wettest 6 years in record, and now we've just continued to add to that extra precipitation. And just today, the National Weather Service came out and saying we're on track right now for the seventh wettest start to a year. So when you look back at 148 years of records, 2019 thus far has been the seventh wettest start. And then for context, we all recall 2014, which is a major flood of record. We're only 6/10 behind where we were in 2014. And what's interesting there, I was just looking at when we went over the spillway in Lake Minnetonka in 2014 was on May 9th. And unfortunately today, we just went over the spillway for the first time this year. But you can see what I'm trying to compare there was, what is their extra kind of technology partnership done? And you can see kind of just comparing apples to apples, it's bought us an extra 2 weeks of trying to manage that water and stay below that spillway. And we were doing well until the last 7 days. We kind of got back-to-back inch to inch and a half rain events, and we weren't anticipating Tuesday night into Wednesdays to be as much as it was, but it turned out it almost became an inch and a half of rain, and that pushed everything over the edge. And put this slide up from the USGS's real-time gauge just to try to convey, just as we start to make headway, we get a big inch and a half or slightly over an inch of rain. So kind of early May, we were almost going to dip below where we could stop discharging maximum capacity, and we got a big rain event. And then we started it below on the 18th. And then even Wednesday, we were making Tuesday, we were making a lot of headway. You can see a really steep drop, and then the rain just kind of knocked everything up. So it's kind of this battle of just when you start to see the lake dropping, then it rains. So as I noted this morning, the lake officially did start to flow over the emergency spillway. It's just a trickle. It's not by any means, this wave of water. But we anticipate a little bit more rain tonight. And obviously any sort of rain that continues to flow in is going to kind of push more water over that edge. So this is what we like to show just graphically how the water level relates to the dam operating plan. So now you start to see we're starting to get into that zone 7, which means unrestricted discharge. So we are officially discharging 300 cubic feet per second out of the dam, and then there's additional water flowing over the spillway. What we will do probably starting on, we started it today, but in earnest next week, officially measuring at the McGinty culverts to get a true reading of what's coming out of, over the spillway and out of the dam. Yeah.
At 300, is Minneapolis handling it? Are between the dam and the Mississippi, are we handling it at 300?
Manager Olson, generally our number we say is on the creek, 300's pushing. That's like the most we like to push out of the dam. So anything above and beyond, you're just going to start going out of banks.
Speaking for a neighbor, we're at just barely.
Okay.
You know, we're right on the, we're starting to pond around lower areas.
Because
And that's across the street from you?
Yeah.
if we were to drop it to 200 and let more water go over the spillway, that's more like a little over 200. It's not like 300 and a little going over the spillway. What I hope we don't do is, because it's going over the spillway, we automatically go to 300.
So Manager Olson, when we're in this zone 7,
Yep.
we technically have to push unrestricted discharge. We're not supposed to be holding back water. When you're in that zone 1, that blue zone, that's when you can only push the maximum, which is that 300. So once we get above this extra threshold, let's try to get it off and create that storage back in the lake so you then can provide the protection. Otherwise, if you're going to try to do this balance, you're just going to extend the duration of the high water event, in theory.
Okay, so now we have to ponder that, because right now, as long as the city can take it, I would agree with that assessment. But if slowing things down for Minneapolis helps buy time, you're right. As we inundate the spillway, eventually the water will be the same on both sides, and it doesn't matter where the dam's.
Yeah, and Manager Olson, for 2014, at a certain point, if you can't get the water out fast enough, it does it for you itself.
Right.
In that case, the lake and the wetland equalized, and there became no control whatsoever. So in this scenario, I think if we can gain back control and get out of that zone, that's my ideal. My goal is to never be. I don't like to be in zone 1 at all. So to be in zone 7, when things are out of technically your control, that isn't a place we like to be. We like to be able to at least stop water from going.
Do we know what the flow over the falls is right now?
Yeah, that was my next slide. So
Okay.
I was going to propose that we put logs at the 494 ridge, see how much more we could store in that area.
Holy
say, Manager Miller, managers driving by there today. I mean, it's that wetland's high. There's not a lot of clearance underneath. I mean, it was higher in 2014, but certainly it's starting to push those thresholds. So to Manager Olson's question, the creek is flowing around 360 CFS. So down in the lower parts of Minneapolis, it's technically probably already flowing out of its banks because of that. Minneapolis got hit pretty hard with the Tuesday, Wednesday rain event, and almost got more on the closer to the 2-inch side. So when things are already as saturated as they are, there's just no, nothing can absorb anything. There's no deficit anywhere, and all of our wetlands and floodplains are just at capacity. So you just see these bounces, and normally you would see this drop a lot faster, and you're not. We're not even discharging 350. We're only discharging 300, and it's just staying at 360.
Yep. Okay.
First, Mr. Whisker, then Manager Miller.
Well, just going back to Manager Olson's question, I was just wondering if you could clarify, under the operating plan, are we even allowed the discretion to ratchet back in zone 1?
No, technically not.
So it's not a choice. In zone 1, we have the flexibility and discretion within a tolerance for managing the timing, but zone 1, it's mandated and prescribed how much discharge we have to release.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Mann?
President White, Manager Olson. Also, if you did try to ratchet down, what ended up happening is you're trying to hold back, the water would just end up going over the overflow anyway. So that's why having that balance there kind of just makes the decision straightforward and what you can do.
And one, I'm sorry.
Manager Miller?
Do you know what's happening in the new ponds they built in Minneapolis, you know, in Bloomington and various other places? Are they full now, or do they contribute to the flowage in the creek, or where does that go to?
Which ponds, maybe?
They're man-made ponds after the last big flood. The city tore down blocks of houses and built ponds on at least 4 places, I think.
Are any of those within our district?
Yeah, they're in our district.
And I haven't got a recent update on those. Those typically end up getting used more with the bigger rain events. So because we've had these 1 inches at a time, they haven't been getting utilized as much. It's when we get the big 3 to 4 inch rainfalls, that's when they'll start to come through.
Well, I guess the follow-up question would be, how do they make them more effective to contribute to the solution of these rains that we're trying to solve farther out west? Because there's more hard surface in the city, and they built these facilities at great cost. I wonder if there's any way of having them utilized in these kinds of events rather than just the big ones.
Manager Miller, I know the city is going through they went through a comprehensive flood analysis across their whole city, so I think they're evaluating that process, that they have this infrastructure, and then how they tie that into resiliency going forward to knowing that, just like we've heard several times, they're gonna have to adapt in a different way as well.
And one other thing I meant to note with this slide, 2 things. One, we let the LMCD know today that we're officially above that 930 because that starts the clock potentially for high water declaration on the lake. So I'll be in close contact with them over the next week or so. And then also, as we've been evolving the dam operation and how that the information that goes into that, we've also been looking at this graphic and looking at the dam operating plan and seeing where can we maybe start to test some new things out. So staff internally has been starting to frame thoughts and conversations to have with the DNR, and something we've been thinking about is trying to potentially operate over the winter in a way that's not going to result in ice jams. But what we often see is the creek is running through January, but Lake Minnetonka freezes over, which forces you to close the dam. So if we can just full-time have aerators out there and operate the dam when we get these kind of late winter rain events and be able to kind of run that off and not be in the place where you usually find yourself in the spring. So that's something, that's one idea we have to approach the DNR to see if they're willing to have that conversation and
Outstanding.
provide that flexibility, or at least test it out, just given the new regime we seem to be in.
That would be a great solution to this climate change question that we've received letters about, like, what's your long-term plan if this stays the way it is? And if you start to run the creek in a way that would operate through the winter would be a very major change for how we operate.
Yeah, we'll see where the conversation goes, and obviously have to get in touch with our creek community as well, just if there's any implications, but it seems like a straightforward solution or option at the moment. Last, I'm just going to end with kind of what's on the radar. So minimal rain tonight. This is the Weather Service forecast for our watershed district. Unfortunately, it looks like Monday, Tuesday is wet, almost 1.5 inches of rain predicted. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if anything changes there. And then last, just keep coordinating with our agency experts. Just last week, we met with Hennepin County to talk about some more real-time monitoring equipment they'd like to install along the creek. And they also let us know that they're also installing another weather station around the Long Lake area. So we'll have another data point for that sub-watershed. And I also just wanted to note that we have been, despite kind of being in this high water situation, we have been actually getting some positive feedback. We've gotten some positive feedback from officials at the Park Board, Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, and some lead staff at the City of Edina saying the information that we're pushing out has been very helpful. And, they feel like they're well equipped with the knowledge and know-hand. So when citizens call them, they can help them be well informed. And I think the feedback we're getting is we seem to, the watershed has a clear understanding of what's going on. We're able to communicate that out. And I know I speak for myself and Ms. Jonley when kind of your biggest critics in 2014 now call and actually give you compliments despite high water concerns. They at least understand and can understand the information and, the transparency we're putting out there. So we'll see where we're at. We're going to push another communication out tomorrow, that email, just to that email distribution list, and just let people know that it's officially going over the spillway, and anticipate it being there for at least a month because it just takes that long to get down with normal rain, which isn't predicted.
Okay. Manager Olson?
How many days before the LMCD declares no lake?
I was talking with Vicki this morning, and it's still not clear to me. They can either, if it's at or above 9:30 for 5 consecutive days, it can be declared, or they can choose to go to 8 days. And I'm not clear on the discretion there. Or if the lake jumps to 930.25, it automatically becomes in effect.
So I remember the 4-day and then the 5th-day decision. And
Yeah,
I didn't
so
wanna do
it could
because-
be if the lake is going down, then you wouldn't
Right,
do
if
it.
it, if the delta is downward
Yeah.
trend, then they say, no, go to 8 days and see, because they don't want to change all the signs over.
Yeah.
Every ramp, every,
So yeah, we'll keep a close on the forecast.
It's a
It's
lot of
looking like we're going to stay there, and then if you're talking an inch and a half of rain on that 5th day, obviously that's probably the telling
great, thank you.
tale there.
We of course are on your distribution list for the news you send to the Creek communities, and they have become more and more comprehensive and much more information. So it's an education for us too.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Stay tuned.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Schaffner. Administrators report. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just
Mr.
want to
Ishmani.
congratulate you on a wonderful job. Especially moving from 2014 to, the people who disapproved of you in 2014 and approving of you now, speaks to the quality of the work that you've done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Whisker.
President White, managers, just one thing to report tonight. I think the managers probably saw earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, Mr. Field, Seth, his last day with the district will be next week. He sent a very nice email out to the board and to staff previously, and just wanted to say that we appreciate his contributions to the district over years, him helping us strategically pivot the research and monitoring program and build out our CARP implementation, CARP management program in 6 Mile Creek, Halstead Bay. Wish him well on his next leg of his journey, and fortunately for us, we'll be able to keep working with him because he's not going too far. He's working with one of our vendors, CARP Solutions. So we wish him the best, and then Eric is working very closely with Brian and Anna on that initiative, and obviously with Brian on his other initiatives to make sure we have a seamless transition plan and don't miss a beat. And I've asked Brian to just send kind of a high-level overview of what that transition plan is going to look like to the board. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to him and ask. And that is all I have for you tonight.
How would you like to handle registrations for the summer tour?
I should send out, if you haven't received it already from Maud, interest and get interest, but you can direct your desire to register to Deb, and she'll take care of that for you. And if you can copy me. I won't be probably doing the work, but that way I can keep tabs on who's going where.
And if 4 of us go, do we need to notice?
Madam President, typically what you would do is just publish a notice that you're attending the MAUD meeting. It's not a meeting of your board, and so if there is a quorum, you shouldn't discuss Minnehaha business per se. But we do provide, as a good practice, just notice that you'll be present at that meeting.
Thank you.
And we have President White's going, Manager Olson's going, and Manager Rognus and Hedgemati are deciding. Okay, very good.
I would like to say that I think the communication with the board regarding the answers to water levels and South Minneapolis have really been very helpful to my understanding. And I've run into people that identify me with the watershed, and they challenge me about what's happening with the local homeowners and wet basements, and I assure them that that connection has not been made, and it was just really very helpful to be able to send along that string of communication to my friends and neighbors that needed some encouragement to understand that there's more than one way of looking at it.
Well, thank you for that.
I think it was a great communication device.
Yeah, sure, you put a lot of work into that with our team internally. I think it turned out well. As part of Manager Hedgemati's onboarding, since he's in that neck of the woods too, he'll be coming in to learn more about dam operations and water level issues in South Minneapolis. So Manager Rognus, if you're interested, I can send out an invite for you to join us. And since
Yeah.
you represent that jurisdiction too, we can keep getting you information and making sure you're able to share that with folks that have questions in your neighborhood.
That'd be good.
Okay, we'll do that.
My dog likes the high water. He doesn't have to run so far to get into the mud.
Stay right on the porch.
You can jump out from the kitchen door and
Yeah, there you go.
we are adjourned.
Thank you.